Overnight, the Federal Department of Education laid off more than 1,300 workers, cutting the agency's workforce by about half. And Education Secretary Linda McMahon says these cuts are just the first step.
Becky Pringle, the president of the country's largest teachers union, the NEA, says teachers are worried.
There is no way that that's going to lead to faster service. Calls will go unlistened to. Emails will go unread. We know that.
But how will these cuts impact Arizona school kids? Joining us is the man who heads up the State Department of Education, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Horne. Superintendent Horne, thanks for joining us. How concerned are you about these cuts to the Federal Department of Education?
Hi, it's great to be with you. No, I'm not concerned at all. I think they're justified. The Department of Education in Washington is a huge building that occupies a full block. And I've been reading about how it's cavernous because over half of the people even show up to work. And my experience with them has been that they're very irrational. They have bad judgment. They're not connected with what's really happening in the schools. I can give you some examples if you want.
Yeah, please.
Well, when I first took office in 2002, the department had a legacy rule that had been imposed previously by the federal government that in order to determine what students needed to be tested if they were English language learners, there were 4 questions asked. I would have just asked one question, what's the dominant language of the student? But they asked 4, one of which was, anybody in your household speak a different language? So Navajo kids who spoke nothing but English would say, well, there's a grandma in my house that speaks Navajo. They would test them. Some of them would fail the test not for language reasons. English was their only language, but for academic reasons. So they would be put in English language learner classes, and some of them conducted in Spanish. You can imagine how the Navajos felt about that. So they complained to me, so I reduced it to one question: what's the dominant language of the student? The Department of Education came down on me and said, you're discriminating because you're under identifying English language learners. So I said, you know what, if you want to affect what I do, sue me. I'm a lawyer. I know where the courthouse is, and I'll meet you there. And they didn't. And then we had teachers teaching kids English who didn't speak proper English themselves. So we said, you know, teach something else, but don't teach English to kids when you don't speak proper English yourself. So they came down on us again, saying you're discriminating against these poor teachers for their accents. So I said again, well, you know, sue me, and they didn't. I think it's an illustration why it's good to have a lawyer as the superintendent of schools, because you have to be able to fight back against the irrationality of the Federal Department of Education.
Superintendent, what has the Department of Education done anything right? I mean, what do those federal education dollars do in Arizona? And out of curiosity, how much money does the state get from the DOE?
Well, there's no question that the dollars do good. Those are appropriated by Congress, and I don't think that they'll be able to cut back on those unless Congress agrees. They can lay off workers without the permission of Congress, but I don't think they can cut off Title I funds that go to poorer schools. Title II, which provides very valuable training in leadership for leaders of schools, special education money. All those things ought to continue, but if they give us the administration of them and take it away from the federal department, we can do a heck of a lot better job than the federal department is doing.
We are talking with the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Horne, about the Federal Department of Education laying off about half of its workforce, more than 1,300 workers. Have there been people at the DOE that you have enjoyed working with that you're worried might not be working there anymore?
I can't use the term enjoyment, but I'm sure there are conscientious people who do a good job there, but there are a lot who don't, and we've encountered, I give you 2 examples. I can give you more if you have the time, but we've encountered problems in dealing with them, and I think they're in Washington D.C. They're not in touch with what's going on in our schools. And I think if the government appropriates the money to be distributed by the state superintendents of school, we'll do a much better job. I don't know how they intend to administer the monies that have been appropriated by Congress, so that's something we still don't know. But I will say that if they choose to have it done by the state superintendents of school, we'll do a much better job.
Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horne joining us here on KTAR to talk about those Department of Education cuts and what they could mean.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Morning News. Click to watch more from KTAR News and hit the button in the middle to subscribe.